Katie joins me now. I loved seeing the old footage especially. It's
it's
absolutely
wonderful.
fantastic.
It's very generous, actually, of the Queen to have opened up all of that royal archive, which she did especially for her 90th. And, you know, you've seen footage you've never seen before.
Exactly. What was she like growing up?
Well, she had actually a very ordinary childhood because, of course, until she was 10, she didn't know that she was going to be Queen because she came to the throne by accident after the abdication of Edward. So you know, she didn't really know. So really, life was very ordinary. She grew up in Windsor at Royal Lodge. She rode ponies. She learned to sing and dance. She adored her younger sister Margaret. She adored her parents. I think a very innocent, protected childhood, but a very, very lovely one, and one that has been actually at the root of her, because family is, and always has been, very, very important to her.
True. The person that knows her best, of course, Prince Philip, and he's the only one that can get away with telling her to behave herself. Not that she would ever misbehave, obviously.
Well, yes, I mean, absolutely. And, you know, they celebrate their 69th wedding anniversary this year, which is a remarkable achievement. And he, you know, he is her rock. You know, I think the words that she used were her constant strength and stay, and he absolutely has been. And of course, he has a celebration on Friday. It's going to be his 95th birthday. Then that wonderful wedding anniversary, and he really has been, I think, a rock to all the family. And he can say no to the Queen. I think he can say a lot worse to the Queen. Actually, he gets away with it. I remember reading one story from a courtier who happened to be in a car with them when the Queen was driving around. The Duke was driving around Sandringham, and he likes to drive at breakneck speed. And the Queen said, "Well, Philip, do slow down." And he said, "Right, one more peep out of you and you can walk the rest of the way." Well, I don't know that many other people that can speak to the Queen like that. And apparently he likes to listen to the television very loudly.
Right.
Soaps, probably the LK show too. And she'll say, "Oh, Philip, do turn the television down." And he'll tell her to promptly shut up.
Really?
Yeah,
that's quite funny. But that's quite good.
Have that relationship, wouldn't you?
After all these years,
69 years.
Of course.
And I think probably sleeping in separate bedrooms, having separate interests, which is something Philip said they have, probably is the secret to a successful marriage.
That's absolutely the key. What about as a mother? Because there has been some criticism in the past that she was a bit distant, especially with Charles. Do you think that's true?
I think in the early years, you have to remember there was a generational difference.
Absolutely,
and particularly in the early years when she had to step up to that role of duty, travel around the Commonwealth. Of course, she had 2 young children. Anne was only little, Charles was little. She did have to leave them behind. And I think it's very easy to look back and say, well, you know, what mother would do that? Well, she was Queen. She was a mother and Queen.
It was a different time.
It was a different time, a different generation. And actually, when you look at the rapport now between her and her children, and I think you particularly saw that in those Annie Leibovitz pictures, there is a real bond between all of them, Andrew, Edward, Anne, but I think particularly Charles. And I always remember that very poignant moment at her Diamond Jubilee in 2012 when Charles got on stage and addressed her as Mummy. Yeah. And that really was quite powerful because we'd never heard him address her with such warmth and affection. And I think there's a very close, unbreakable bond, and particularly as you see Charles stepping up to the plate more and doing more on behalf of the Queen. Real closeness.
Which she has to do as she's getting older, because we think she's invincible, but, you know, she's 90. You forget she's 90 years old. Obviously a granny of 8, and a great-grandmother, of course, and very close to the younger generation, and she sort of gets them, doesn't she?
Yes, I mean, and I think for all the criticism that she wasn't close or wasn't able to always be close to her children, she's certainly compensated and made up for that with her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. And she spends a lot of time with them, you know. As busy as she is, there are very important periods in the year where she's on recess, and those are the times she's with her family. All of the grandchildren will go up to Balmoral this summer, and she's very close to her great-grandchildren. I mean, I loved the picture of her with Princess Charlotte on her lap, Prince George next to her, and those other great-grandchildren. She has the time now to enjoy those moments and enjoy being a great-grandmother, and she loves it. And there's a wonderful interview that Duchess of Cambridge gave to celebrate the Queen's 90th, and she revealed that when they got to Balmoral, George, who calls his great-grandmother Gan, you know, there's often a present on the bed or something left in the room, something to just make them feel at home. And that's very much, I think, a reflection of how much she adores her family and how much thought goes into those visits. You know, she cares about it.
Well, I hope she has a great time with her official, well, she's had her birthday, but this is her official birthday.
The official celebrations all weekend.
All weekend.
Yes, very exciting.
Katie, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.